In this presentation, we will take a look at the type of clients and the type of bookkeeping system for which our system will work well for. In other words, we're putting together a very systematic bookkeeping system, and it will work well for certain types of customers, certain types of needs. So whether we are a business that are thinking about implementing an accounting system such as this, or a bookkeeping business that wants to pick up clients, we need to understand the types of clients that we want to pick up. Clearly, we want to pick up types of clients that have integrity, that we're going to work well with, that we're going to get paid from, and that from that perspective. We also want to know what types of clients we want to pick up in terms of their needs, so that we can specialize what we do to a specific client. And that's what we're doing within bookkeeping. Even within accounting, within bookkeeping, we've got to trim our needs down, what we do down to specifics, so we can specialize and differentiate in this way. This is one way to differentiate, by doing a specific type of bookkeeping. Who are we going to apply this bookkeeping for? What type of clients are we looking for when we're using this type of bookkeeping system? If we want to variate from that system, if and when do we want to do that? These are questions we need to know and understand as we go through our bookkeeping process. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. First, we want to define what we do and what type of client would fit well for what we do. And for this case, we're going to be talking about small businesses, because we will be offering a cash basis service. So what we're going to do is bookkeeping, specific bookkeeping on a cash basis in a simplistic type of way, getting the information directly from the bank statement in a cash basis format. And that will typically work for smaller businesses who have specific needs, oftentimes to compile the information in a format that can be useful for end of the year needs, such as tax preparation and financial statements. We'll talk more about what this includes, and in defining what it is we do and what type of clients we work with, we also need to define what we do not do and what types of clients we're not going to take on, so that we can focus in on our specialty. So areas to consider are going to be the areas that are kind of in between we want to think about, such as inventory. Typically, we're not taking on inventory in this type of system, because if we want a full service tracking of inventory, that's going to add a level of complexity. So we'll talk about different ways that we can think about inventory, and we may want to work with a small client for inventory. But if we take on a client that has inventory, we need to be straightforward with what types of services we're going to provide in terms of tracking that inventory, how we're going to deal with that inventory. Otherwise, we may just want to not be working with customers who have a significant need to track inventory, and work with more types of clients that just have service type industries, because those lend themselves to a straight cash basis format more easily. So we will actually work a problem where we will have inventory involved, so you can see the kind of complications that you may run into with inventory in the system, and decide for yourself, do you want to include inventory, or do you want to just work with customers that don't have that inventory type need? Payroll is another issue that we want to consider. Whether the customer has payroll or not, do we want to work with the types of clients that are sole proprietors and don't have any payroll needs? They're just going to be sole proprietors and just need the needs for the financial statements, basically the profit and loss or income statement. Or if they do have payroll, how are we going to deal with payroll? Do we want to have an outside service dealing with payroll? Do we want to enter the payroll ourselves and take on that level of complexity? We, in this problem, will include payroll just so we can see some of the complications with payrolls and some of the options that we have with payroll. However, if we're starting out, we might want to consider taking on small customers that don't have the payroll needs, or we don't need to take on the payroll needs. And again, we'll look at some other options that we can use to deal with payroll. We also want to be clear on what it is we do not do in this system. So in our system we're looking at here, we're not going to be doing a full service accrual bookkeeping. We'll talk about what that is. What we are doing is a cash basis bookkeeping based on the information that is in the bank. We'll take a look at more detail of what those differences are. We're not going to be doing tax preparation. And you can think about doing tax preparation, but we're going to argue here that we're just doing bookkeeping at this point, not tax preparation. We'll discuss why that can be beneficial in some cases for bookkeeping. We're not doing financial statement preparation, meaning We're not doing audits of financial statements or compilations or reviews. We're just basically providing the reports necessary. We'll talk more about that. Full service payroll, we're typically not going to be doing the full service payroll process, and we'll think about some workarounds for dealing with payroll as well. So let's get into a little bit more detail about these items. Full service accrual bookkeeping. Full service accrual bookkeeping means that we're going to be tracking things like accounts receivable and accounts payable. We're going to be entering invoices, we're going to be entering bills, we're going to be entering the data as it happens throughout the time period. In our system we're proposing here, we're not doing that. What we're really doing is taking the information that's clearing from the bank already and entering that data into the system. And that means we have no accounts receivable. That means we have no revenue recognition principle. We're not recognizing revenue when the work is done, as would be done under an accrual method, but when it cleared the bank, that's when we're going to recognize revenue. So it's not a full service system in that format. We're just doing the data input really from the bank statement. We're also not doing a matching principle, meaning we're not entering the expenses when they happened. We're entering the expenses when they cleared the bank. Now, there will be some exceptions. If we see like large transactions and whatnot, we're going to have to do some accrual type concepts, meaning, for example, if we paid cash for equipment, we'll put that on as an asset. And if we took out a loan or something like that, we'll have to deal with some accounts that will be kind of more accrual related. But we're not going through the full process. And the major things that we'll notice on the balance sheet is that we're not invoicing people, we're not tracking accounts receivable, we're not getting bills, and we're not tracking accounts payable. So again, if a company really needs that, we'll discuss a little bit how they can track the accounts receivable out, in our system using a system like this. However, if a customer needs the system in order to process invoices like bills from the company file and send those out, that's not what we're really doing. We're just entering the data into the system in our case. If the company wants to track outstanding payables, who is owed money to, that's not what we are really doing either. We're just basically putting the bills that have been paid into the system. So it's important when we discuss with clients what it is we're proposing to do here and what we're not doing. The tax preparation is also something I wouldn't recommend doing in this type of format. So taxes being like income taxes at the end of the year, Form 1040 income taxes. If you were to take on income taxes, it could be a revenue stream for income tax, but it's also something that can get complicated fairly quickly because once we start doing taxes, we'll have the business taxes and then we'll have the personal taxes. And if you do not do the taxes, it could be beneficial for bookkeepers because then you can work with CPA firms and other accounting firms that do taxes but don't want to do as much of the data entry type of bookkeeping process. And they're more than willing to work with bookkeepers that want to pick that up. And so we'll talk a little bit more about networking and who you can work with. And it's a lot easier to set up a system that we will be proposing if we can work with tax preparers and accounting firms and CPA firms. They can help with the end of the period adjustments, help with things like tax preparation, help with things like payroll, help with things like end of the period adjustments. So we're going to be actually dependent on those things to be done by things like accounting firms under a system like this. And it's easier to work with them if they don't think that we're competing on the areas that they see as their major revenue source. So if we don't compete on the tax side but do the bookkeeping and use them for the tax side, we have a very good type of relationship that could build on a business side of things. So that's why under this type of system we're proposing here, whether it be our books or whether it be we have taken on clients, that we do not do the tax preparation and work with somebody, the tax preparer, either someone that we propose or whatever tax preparer the client would like us to work with. But it'd be nice for us to build a relationship with the tax preparers because we can feed each other in terms of clients and working and being able to work more efficiently and all that. Financial statement preparation. What we will do in our system, what our main goal for the small companies is often to make basically an income statement at the end of the year that can be used to help end of the year processing, including the tax return. So that's usually what the data entry is often needed for small companies. They want to track what they're doing. They want to make sure that they're getting the financial statement at least compiled from the bank, and that information then being put into such a format that can be used for the tax preparation. So although we're making reports such as a profit and loss and balance sheet possibly, probably we're focusing in on more of the profit and loss. We're not really reviewing those. We're not putting any opinion on those. We're not, saying that these are correct in our opinion as a format of a review or an attestation type of format. We're just entering the data and giving reports for that data. If they need a review, such as for like a loan, if you needed to have a loan or something like that, the bank may want some type of opinion on the financial statements. And for that, again, we'd want to work with the CPA firms. So we would want to work with an accounting firm so that they can take that information and then process it to give their opinion on that information. That's not what we do here. We're just putting the data into the system to process the reports for it. It's important to be clear about that with the clients and let the clients know that, hey, what we're entering into the system doesn't mean that we're giving our assurance in it, as would be the case basically for financial statement preparation. And we'll talk a little bit more about making that clear in terms of an engagement letter when we talk about putting together an engagement letter in terms of what we do and what we're not doing. Full service payroll. Also something that I would recommend under this system, we're not to take on the full service payroll and work with clients either that are sole proprietors that don't have the payroll or that have a fairly limited payroll. And if they have limited payroll, one option is to look at the payroll within the system and see if we want to take that on. Or another option would be to work with the CPA firm or payroll professionals. There's a lot of companies that just do payroll. And again, that could be a very good relationship. Payroll is another area that could be a lot of liability in place, and it can get complex really quick. Even with very few employees, payroll can start to get somewhat complex. And therefore, it may be worthwhile for us to start working with a payroll company that will basically take on those needs outside of our system. And we then will just enter the payroll checks into the system from what they give us so that we can still be on a cash basis, just entering the data on a very simplified cash basis, and the payroll can be taken care of by payroll professionals, and we can get any adjusting entries needed at the end of the time period for tax preparation as we work with the CPA firm. So the goal here is to make things basically as simple as possible for an easy bookkeeping process, whether it be us for simplified clients or us in terms of our own books, and work with other professionals for those specialized needs in order to make that happen. So to do that, then we need to define exactly what it is we do, exactly what we're looking for the others to do, and then we can define how to work with that system and put together a system that's very efficient in that format. Note what payroll involves. We have to not only pay the employees and track that, but we have to take withholdings for federal, this is the U.S. withholding, federal income tax, Social Security, Medicare, state taxes. If there's multiple states or regions, that gets very complex very quickly. So we want to, probably avoid that. If we're not aware of the state taxes that we're in, then again, that's another area we would probably want to stay away from, unless we're really getting like the full service type of from our software. But it's probably something we want to work with someone else for. We have to pay the payroll taxes to the Fed or the state, or the client's going to have to have that system to determine how much to pay to the Fed or the state. And within the 940s and the 941s, quarterlies and yearly forms, as well as state forms, would need to be generated. So even with a few employees, this could start to get fairly complex to process, and may be worthwhile under a simplified system for us to just work with another professional to basically take on the payroll. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.